Welcome to the Exhibit A podcast.
Welcome to Exhibit A. Today we have back with us Anthony Lay, our superb attorney who seems to have his finger on the pulse for everything that goes on in court. How are you, Anthony?
I'm doing great, Don.
So, a lot of our clients are wondering what's going on with the court system. There's been so many continuances of cases. It seems
Right.
like we're receiving messages almost on a weekly or a biweekly basis.
Right.
And Anthony, have you noticed outside what it looks like? I mean, supposedly businesses are reopened, but you notice how barren the streets are?
It's pretty wild right now. It's definitely getting a little bit busier over the past couple weeks, especially the past couple days. Some of us have been in the office kind of just doing a little bit of work here and there. And I even notice on my daily commute that there's more people out jogging, that there's more companies that are starting to open up very slowly, but very safely. And that also applies to the court and the way that they're going to be implementing kind of a return to business as usual, but not really business as usual. We'll talk about that today.
Yeah. So when I drive to the office every day, I pass over the 210 freeway, and over the past 7 weeks, it's been, quite a scene. You see just this small trickle of cars, kind of probably the type of traffic that you would see back in maybe the 1940s or the 1930s or something. Now,
Exactly.
yesterday I went over the same pass, and I noticed there was quite a few cars on the road. So people are going back to work.
Right.
But
I take the 110, which is I think one of the first freeways in Los Angeles, and it hasn't seen that amount of traffic probably since it was around it was first built. So
yeah.
It's been very nice getting to and from the office, but we can definitely tell that things are starting to kind of make their way back to normal, which is a good thing, but provided that it's done safely.
Yeah. So yesterday I was coming to work, and I saw that flow, and I thought, okay, well, things are going to look really similar to what they used to be. But when I was going home in the evening, Pasadena was barren. I'm going to tell you that I drove down Colorado just to look at all the storefronts and the pedestrian traffic, and it didn't look too much different yet. And I think it's because the restaurants are still haven't opened, and all of those businesses that aren't in the current phase, because right now as we're broadcasting, this is phase 2. Right. And it's really sad. So I just want to say before we talk about the court system that our hearts go out to all of you who have either lost your jobs or you're on some type of a furlough, and especially the people that have small businesses and you're seeing your dreams, end in some respects or delayed. Very, very sad. So now, with the court system, Anthony, the situation isn't too much different. We've got a lot of people that are delayed justice, and depending on which side of the table you are, that could be a good or bad thing. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that one of the things that is hitting people the hardest is the inability to move forward or get custody orders or family law orders in their cases, and they're not able to address some of the issues that are going on, either related to the coronavirus or not. It's kind of been very much a point of a standstill in a lot of our clients' cases, unfortunately, with just the way that the courts have been shut down and their inability to kind of address certain matters while they're trying to implement safety at the courthouse. So it's been difficult not only for our clients. We're doing our best to help them navigate through it, to come to alternative agreements where possible. But first and foremost is going to be the safety of the general public, as well as the court staff and the judicial officers. So they're doing what they can. As everyone knows, what we've been talking about is that the court's been in a shutdown, kind of very limited essential functions mode since probably about April 22nd. And at that time, there was an interim order by the California court system, as well as our supervising Judge Brazil, that the courts would remain shut down through May 15th. So as we approached that date, we were kind of, sitting on the edge of our seat, trying to see if there was going to be any possibility of that coming to fruition. And unfortunately, just with the way that this pandemic has developed, that May 15th date is probably not going to be feasible. And we just got some guidance about that over the weekend.
Yeah, let me also say that the original date was April 15th.
That's right.
Then they moved it to May 15th, and now they've done some other things. Could you explain what the recent communique was as far as when the cases will be heard?
Yeah, so in a web kind of a question and answer session with our supervising judge and his assistant supervising judge, Judge Brazil and Judge Taylor, they identified a target date, which was June 22nd. Now, June 22nd doesn't mean that everything is going to be back to normal. June 22nd, according to those judges, meant that that was going to be the target date by which they resume operations in the process of getting things back to normal. Now, as the May 15th came and went over the past weekend, it looks like that June 22nd date is still going to be the target. They're still monitoring the situation, but as of right now, any hearings scheduled between now and probably May 22nd is very likely that unless those fall into a specific set of hearings, that those will be continued.
You mean June 22nd?
I'm sorry, June 22nd, correct.
Yeah, so we had a bunch of cases that was calendared for May.
Right.
And we were kind of told by our supervising judge, Riff, that don't consider those to be real court dates, and that tended to be true. We found out kind of at the last minute, but those things were all pushed back, and it looks that unless you have a very serious emergency, that your case, even if it was on calendar for May and then even most of June, has been pushed back. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So one of the things that the court has had to grapple with was the process and the difficulty in continuing hundreds and potentially thousands of cases, all to future dates, all to dates in which they're heard based on priority, but also issuing notices to attorneys and counsel. And the reality of that means that a lot of these hearings, they don't really get continued until the day of the hearing. So you'll have litigants, you'll have our office that are checking the case summary almost kind of on a obsessive basis to see, well, when's the new date going to be? And sometimes it takes a matter of calling the court, which I can tell you from experience is no small task in and of itself. They're just receiving a ridiculous amount of calls, probably from people like us who are trying to figure out what's exactly happening. But we got some guidance from Judge Riff over the weekend, and his statement was this, basically, that although your hearing date might not show up as being continued, if it doesn't fall within a domestic violence or a international contempt or custody proceeding, it's going to be continued, provided that it's within this May 15th to June 22nd period. You're looking at dates right now, probably in early to mid fall. Some cases are being continued into summer, but I can tell you that most of the ones we've seen are probably now in September, October, even sometimes November.
Yeah. So, what is that doing to the court system? I mean, we talked about, you already mentioned that there's going to be somewhat of a prioritizing of types of cases that will be heard first, second, third, as the courts start opening up. And, that causes a logjam in and of itself. I mean, as far as our firm is concerned, I mean, you look at the calendar, you could see that there were several cases that are on the same day that originally weren't, and we're going to be forced to go and ask for continuances or things of that nature. And compounded with that is, what about all the new cases, all the new matters? People are still needing justice. I mean, they've been filing requests for orders. They've been filing, new divorces, new parental action type of cases, modifications. All those things have been going on since the stay-at-home orders in March, and there's going to be this huge backlog. So it's going to be quite interesting, I think, to see how all of this is handled. Do you agree?
Absolutely, and I think that something that really was interesting and came out of this pandemic situation was the highlight of the need of parties to try to work out disputes amicably, and this is especially true with custody cases. As you know, parties are required to go to family court services mediation anytime custody is an issue in one of the cases. And that generally requires the parties to go and, go to their appointment time, sit in a crowded waiting room, and see a mediator for maybe 5-10 minutes to see very quickly whether it's possible to resolve the case. Unfortunately, with social distancing, the ability to go and do that and sit in a crowded room is just not going to be possible. So this has been a process that's I understand has been in the works for some time, but the court has launched as of yesterday an online dispute resolution tool. It's an online kind of version of the negotiation in the mediation, and all it provides is the ability for the parties to do their family court services mediation online. If they're able to resolve it, then it'll assist them in putting together a parenting plan, and that will get transmitted to the judge and signed, and then the hearing can come off calendar. So that's one tool that the court is hoping to try to get through, cut through some of the backlog of these cases. Now, we might have our own opinions as to the efficacy of mediation. My personal feeling is that if they're talking about going into court, then people might not be as willing to settle these parts of the cases. But I always encourage my clients to give it a good faith try. I think this is a good tool to maybe explore the option of trying to get something in place sooner rather than later.
More than ever, Anthony, people are going to need to really try to make some concessions and settle their cases. So in that respect, it's a good thing, because a lot of times we're dealing with parties who are stubborn, and they're clinging on to issues and taking positions that may not be reasonable. I think now, there's this really, really big push to settle cases, and I'm glad that the courts have set up that. I don't know how, like you, I don't know how successful they will be, because I personally think that in those type of mediations, getting close and personal with the mediator, in a court setting might make it seem more formal, and people might take it more seriously. It may be a little bit harder, or easier, I should say, to hide behind your camera and say, no, I'll see you in court. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
Right. So I think the mediation process is just the nature of having to go and park your car and walk to the courthouse and be in that environment to know, wow, this is something that's actually really serious. Maybe my extra 2 hours on Thursday isn't that big of a deal, or maybe we could split it up or come to some sort of an agreement. If it's just a matter of logging on to the LA court website and doing this perfunctory process, it might not have the intended results. I'm hopeful that it will. I always, there's really nothing to lose. It's completely free. So I'm doing this process on a couple of my cases. I'm encouraging my other clients to maybe take a look at this and see if it's a viable option, to see if they can work out some of their disagreements.
Yeah, if you got a client that is really settlement oriented and is a strong desire to settle it, then it would work. I'll tell you that so far, since the stay-at-home orders went into place and the courts have been closed, I've personally done 2 settlement conferences over Zoom. One of them was a voluntary settlement conference, which lasted probably 8 or 9 hours, I'm going to guess. And then we did we used a paid retired judge to mediate in another one. Right. Neither one settled. It was very interesting. They felt very similar to the real thing. When you're in person with these people, and stuff, it felt the same way.
Right.
I hope that the county keeps statistics with respect to the success rate of these video calls, because we may be surprised. Maybe there's really no significant difference as to the rate of settling cases via camera versus the going into court. If the camera's working, then I think that would be great for everybody. What do you think?
I'm open to anything that makes it easier for litigants to have a means of communication, and to kind of maybe try to set aside some of the hard feelings and really come to the table and put some work in and do that. Now, do I believe that logging on to the court website and doing this process is going to be successful in that? I don't know. I'm hopeful it will be. But as you and I both know, the court is very slow to adopt new things. It's not very on the bleeding edge of technology as some law firms are and other litigants are. So for them to even consider this as a possibility just goes to show how unique of a pandemic and situation we're finding ourselves in, that they would be able to put something like this together in the span of 2 months, which is basically unheard of for the court to do for almost anything. So, I appreciate that they're trying to explore this option. I think it's a good tool. I think that it's, all parties that are involved in custody cases should at least give it a good try and make a good faith effort to try to resolve some of their things. But, I'm more interested in the fact that they've implemented this in such a quick timeline.
Necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Exactly.
It's funny that you say that about it. Is I think that our audience should know that LA County especially is slow in moving, and it makes sense because we're the largest court system possibly in the country and possibly in the world. I don't know. Maybe India's got a larger court system, but man, we've got a lot of courthouses, and there's a lot of people that live in this metropolitan area. So things move slowly. And when you said that, I remembered you and I doing a trial recently where we were in the old-fashioned courthouse, and
seems like a lifetime ago now.
It's nothing. Yeah.
Right.
Where if you go to like some of the smaller counties, they're state-of-the-art stuff. A lot of our courthouses are not equipped, and so it really was amazing to see them quickly adapt, when they had to.
Right. I mean, I think any kind of innovation when it comes to the court system is welcome. Something that is willing to try something new, something that is another tool to try to be more economical and more efficient. We're certainly in unprecedented times with the backlog of cases. So when things start opening back up in June 22nd, I don't think, what Judge Riff has said is that we shouldn't expect things to look like normal. I don't think that we're going to see trials kind of unfolding in the same manner as the ones that we've worked on in the past. I think we're going to see social distancing implemented in the courtroom as out in the hallways as well. It's going to be very different, and it's going to be very kind of, I want to say weird, but it's not going to be what longtime attorneys have been used to in terms of going to court on family law hearings. Yeah,
I'm a little bit anxious about the whole thing. So do you have your suit pressed and your shoes polished, ready to go for after June 22nd?
I've been itching to go back into the courtroom as much as any other attorney has. We have a lot of work on our hands in terms of helping out our clients and getting them to the next steps of their cases. So I'm ready to go, and I'm looking forward to that June 22nd date, every single day.
You and me, buddy. You and me. Okay, well, this was fun. You're very informative. I hope that our audience, gained something from this. So thank you again for joining us on Exhibit A, and thank you, Anthony, for all of your pearls of wisdom.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Don.
For more information, visit us at PasadenaLawOffice.com.